Once my chums were all suited up, I disappeared into my room after pushing Hiromi out to get changed myself. Of course I had the actual Netrunner undersuit. So instead of pants and armored jacket, I slipped on a suit, leaving me in skin-tight flexible armor. Then I threw on the boots and chest rig. I had to make some quick adjustments for the folds since I wasn't wearing the silly pants that came with it, and instead wrapped the straps around my legs with some Velcro-like material I had. Then I adjusted the chest rig, threw on the armored gloves, and then the helmet. I stalked out of my room and stood before my mostly still armored chums. Malcolm had taken off his helmet to eat, and Hiromi was half slid out of her chest rig. And this is what it will look like when you guys stop being weird and put on the skin-tight armored Netrunner suit, I proclaimed, showing off the much tighter fit of the armor and my improved maneuverability. Pass. Hard pass. I don't mind you using it, but I like pants, Hiromi added, and I have to all of them. Fine. Wear your subpar armor. I then promptly walked over and flopped onto the couch and wiggled to get my helmet off too. Pass me the chips. Yeah, alright. Ichi muttered lazily, reaching over and throwing me a bag of some sort of pseudo-potato chips I pulled from a vending machine. What are we watching? The TV was on, and Ichi and Malcolm were sort of zoned out watching it. Some comedy show thing? Not sure. Apparently Ichi wants to watch Watson Whore After. I didn't say that. He snapped at Hiromi, looking a little red. Well, I don't think I really want to watch that. Sorry, Ichi. It's fine. I didn't say I wanted to. Only that it was coming on next. And then he refused to let us change the channel. Hiromi whispered into my ear, and I giggled. I quickly changed the channel through the expedited power of I had hacked all of the entertainment system forever ago. Then we just sort of vegged out in full kit. I don't want to know. I do. This looks like the weirdest start to some XPD I've ever seen. Aghari called out right behind June as they both walked in and stopped looking at the pile of armored teens spread across the couch. Don't say that. I shrieked, blushing red at Aghari, who instantly broke into her cackling laugh at my outrage. My chums were all flushing at the idea too. Is that your new armor? The one you leapt from the Arasaka shipment? June asked, but Hiromi jumped in. We gathered all of this completely legally as per our contract with Arasaka management in recovery of the critical data that was stolen from their klept shipment. June just blinked and nodded slowly as if he understood. Wow, she is a little corpo, ain't she? Aghari asked, and June just nodded. Ignoring how Hiromi was pouting, I decided to show off. Standing up and resettling the helmet back on my head. So what do you think? Preem, right? High-end armor. ECM integrated, with a directional mic embedded into the helmet. We haven't messed with the ECM emitters yet, but we will be able to personalize that as well. You look like a do-girl. Aghari offered instantly, with zero hesitation or empathy. So I of course attacked her. I'll show you do-girl. I roared as I jumped at her, earning an honest squeak from Aghari as she wasn't expecting my lack of chill, and then I slammed into her. Aghari of course fought dirty and instantly tried to stab me in the eyes, but I had a helmet. Her probing attacks were deflected and I started grappling, which wasn't easy since she was all chrome as well, but then something lifted us bodily apart. June was holding me up by the back of my rig, and Aghari back by her arm. Aghari was smiling, teeth fully exposed, like she was ready to tear my throat out. I would have done the same back, but I had my helmet blocking my mouth. Alright, cut it out. Aghari, calm down please, Motoko is playing. Call me a do-girl again. You and then June just shook me up and down a few times. See, just playing. PFFT. You look like a strangled cat like that. Aghari offered, cackling, and I just pouted at June, which was blocked by my helmet. Okay, the helmet was a problem. But I took a deep breath and decided to be the bigger person. I'm done. Let me go, June, I said calmly, and he looked at me with narrowed eyes as if he suspected I was lying, but eventually he let me go, although funnily enough he didn't let go of Aghari, who had noticed and was giving him a petulant look. Then I stepped back and brushed myself off. I win. I told her simply, and that set her off. What? How? June interfered. Exactly. June, as my older brother, is obviously my secret weapon. Anytime he interferes it means I win. That's cheating. I shrugged and strutted back to my chums who had been watching with interest. You okay? Hiromi asked, and I just laughed as I tugged off the helmet. I'm fine. Although I really need to wear my tech goggles under this helmet or something. Akari going for my eyes was a bit of a scare. Okay, so you want this? I asked Malcolm as his hollow emitters activated. Yellow lights flowed around him, with some silver here and there as well. You look like your car, Ichi called out, teasing, and Malcolm just flipped him off. The Caliburn yellow and silver is an excellent color combination. They tested it. Boo! Hiromi called out, earning a glare from Malcolm, but I just moved on. If this is what he wanted, it was good enough for me. All right, Hiromi. Green. Maybe flames? Can you do flames? I can do flames. It's a slightly up-jumped hollow emitter after all. Green flames it is. I offered as I started designing the hologram that would flow over her, to activate the ECM system. Within a few minutes Hiromi looked like she had green fire flowing out of her hands and around her hips up her back. More than enough coverage to make sure the ECM protection would kick in. Mwahahahaha. She cackled evilly, suddenly startling everyone before she looked at all of us. How was that? Did I get it right? Boo! Malcolm called in turn and tossed some of his chips at her. Ignoring Malcolm and Hiromi getting into a fight, neither could really hurt each other with all the armor. I moved on to Ichi. His was simpler. Just make it not look stupid like their choices, he called out, just loud enough that Hiromi and Malcolm could hear him. Which of course changed the target as Malcolm attacked Ichi from behind and Hiromi joined in. I ignored the wrestling match happening right next to me, and focused on the hologram design. Well, Ichi could get a copy of what I was doing then. Lines of light flowing up through the body. Of course I wasn't just going to keep it as a stable source. The activation would have the light flow upwards from the feet and hands until it reached the head in just a moment, increasing the light and keeping it stable. Okay, so I was basically just pulling a Tron, but Tron was pretty cyberpunk. And it looked so cool. Ichi would get an orangish red color, while I went pure white. Then I activated both of our colors. Malcolm and Hiromi jerking back as Ichi's hologram started, the light flowing up his arms and into his chest. My own white lines arcing up my legs and forming a cool outline. There. All done. I chirped happily, rocking back and forth a little to see the hollow emitters do an okay job keeping up with the movement. I bet this would look awesome on a motorcycle. It's Nova, Ichi said, playing with moving around and seeing the light arc off him as well. I like my fire more, but it does look preem. Although Ichi, you need to change, you can't just match with Motoko, Hiromi argued, but Ichi and I both just ignored her. We all had a good time after everything was done, playing around and ignoring June and Akari, as Akari kept interfering, but eventually everyone had gone home with their armor and equipment, and my room was suddenly much emptier. That and I finally had time for other grinding again. That morning I was back at the gun range. Thanks to the Raffen gig, I was actually pretty close to leveling reflex. Shooting all the Raffen running around blindly in their camp had taken some effort, and had given me a lot of alerts. Now I just needed to grind out the last bit. Settling into the gun range I had been going to, I quickly loaded up the magazines I had for my copperhead. But that wasn't all that I had brought. The Arasaka Masamune was a gun I had wanted to play with for a while. Sure, it was overly engineered, but I wasn't really planning on using it in the field. I liked guns that could get half blown up and still fire for that. But for a gun range? It was a nice treat. I pulled it out of the case and grabbed a few of the stupid Arasaka logo-marked magazines, and started loading those up as well. I set the copperhead to the side for a minute. Instead I slipped the mag into the Masamune and took aim. The hollow sight was already perfectly on point. No need for any zeroing. I fired. And in a 3-round burst that I barely felt, it punched holes through the hologram targets. Then I fired again, and again. I don't really like 3-round bursts. I switched it to single shot and started plinking away as well. It was irritating. It actually was possible to mod the rifle to be full auto, but I hadn't done it with this one yet. Probably a project I would do once I went home, cause 3-round burst was bleg. Either way, I burned through the expensive Arasaka branded ammo I had brought with me and then put the Masamune away. Pulling out the copperhead, I was actually smiling, as I flipped off the safety, took aim and held the trigger down. Full auto silenced fire burst from the gun and I easily held her in control, putting rounds right through the holograms without any effort as my arms kept the recoil completely controlled. Then as soon as I was about to run out of ammo, I dropped the magazine, quick loading in another and just started firing again. I had made sure there was a round still in the chamber, so it only took half a second to put in a new mag and I was off again. I almost felt like cackling as I kept firing full auto. This is what a rifle should be. Firepower. Then finally I got it. 100 assault XP gained. Assault skill level up. Yay. I nearly cheered at the level up. Assault 8. Wait. I wasn't here to grind assault. I was trying to grind reflex. I took a second for that thought to flow through my head before I did actually break out into giggles. I shifted my grip on the rifle a little, slightly more secure, a tiny synergy with rifle A's to be able to line up a shot that tiny millisecond faster. My poor copperhead was a bit overheated, so since I had just maxed out what I could do with it, I unloaded it, and set it back to the side. I still had handguns to level. Smiling, I pulled out my Lexington and whistled as I fitted the silencer. Dash. I didn't quite manage the reflex level, or the handgun one, before I decided to take a break. Heading home, I took the scenic route, driving through the heavy city traffic and just enjoying the feel of my quadra rumbling along. Honestly, everything was kind of quiet right now. Section 9 was flush with cash. We had lots of new equipment. My armor build for the team was done, and Hiromi was the only one still doing any real work as she was setting up deals to sell off some of the stuff we didn't need. So it was just kind of quiet. I had considered picking up a new gig from Waikiko or another fixer, but I was kind of enjoying the grind time. A bit of me time, just for myself between gigs. It felt nice. In fact, I didn't want to go home. Bit weird, as I was a bit of a homebody. I wanted to go out and do something. Hiromi was in class. Ichi and Malcolm could be fun, but you know what? I was a cruel afterlife merc. I shifted heading towards Watson. Traffic got pretty bad on the way, enough that I was tempted to just park and maybe call my Kusanagi so I could just swerve around, but I was feeling pretty chill after all that reflex training, so I just relaxed into the comfy quadra seating and inched my way to the club. When I finally arrived, there was plenty of open parking and I grabbed a spot and sauntered down the steps into the afterlife. Hey. As if this place was going to be my afterlife. No, mine would probably be a digital landscape, full of demons to fight or something. Hell. I'm saying I'm probably going to hell, but that just means more demons to fight. The bouncer gave me a nod, not even needing to scan me, as he stepped aside letting me in. He must have a good memory, it's not like I had been around much. Either way, I walked into the heavy music of the club, and felt the atmosphere. Like always, there were mercs all over the place, although this time there was no one dying on a table, so that was nice. No, I guess being midday the place was more quiet and preparing for the night raids than anything else. I walked up to the bar. It wasn't Claire behind the bar, but another guy that I didn't recognize, but I just ordered a soda and settled in. I was honestly just planning on staring into the bottom of my drink for a while. Not because I was in a depressed mood, but just to enjoy the ambience. There was nothing quite like a cyberpunk bar after all. I was just chilling out, enjoying the music and vibes when the queen herself walked in. Rogue sauntered in, and I could feel the ripple of attention she brought with her. Mercs all over the club glanced up as she walked in and towards her little booth area. It was interesting, but more than that, I noticed a few of the mercs around the bar stand up. They sort of got in line? Well, they talked to Rogue's guard to set up a meeting, I guess. Huh? You need anything else, honey? I blinked at the question from the bartender before shaking my head. Not really, just noticed everyone got up to go talk to Rogue as soon as she came in. You'd think they would just send her a text if they needed something from her. Huh? Send the boss a text, that's a good one. Nah honey, if you are looking for an afterlife gig, you come to Rogue in person. Same if you need something from her. She doesn't do biz over the line, never know who's watching, and with someone like Rogue? A lot of people are probably watching. Yeah, makes sense, I muttered, before looking at the bartender again. So Rogue hands out gigs if you come talk to her? Yeah, sometimes. Not always, and not to every crew. You have to have the skills she needs, yeah? But if you talk to her, you can find out if you got what she needs for a gig. Weird, I uttered before shrugging. Not interested anyways, and honestly if I want a gig that bad, I'll just go make one. Sure, there could be more blowback without a fixer, but the pay was real preem. Hey, anyone in here a techie? We need one. A voice called out and I was doubly surprised as heads popped up all over. Now what's going on? Hey, that honey is someone told by Rogue they need a skill set they don't got. They might be able to tap in a free merc, or steal someone from another team. It's all part of the game. She offered and I nodded. That made sense. I watched as an obvious techie with a set of body armor that was covered in tools wandered over to the guy that had called out, and a few moments later they shook hands and wandered back to Rogue, who was rolling her eyes and tossed the man a shard. Gig acquired, I guess. Neat. I left the club after hanging out for a while. Afterlife was neat, but I had spent my social batteries. Instead I decided to focus on what I wanted to do next, having used the time at the bar to figure it out. Getting home, I wandered over to my workbench inside my room and plopped down into the chair. I wanted to level my tech ability more. Between my work on the armor for Section 9, and the tools I made a big advancement, but I still wanted more. So I plopped down the bag of supplies I had bought on my way home, and went to work. CAD first. Connecting my personal link into the laptop, I was able to do a lot of work without even touching the keyboard or mouse now, just letting my mental net running work on what I needed, as my hands parted out parts for what I was going to do. I had a lot of money, so I was going to basically burn a lot of it for experience. The parts I had bought were everything I would need to make rudimentary drones. Design Wizard, AI Whisperer and Robotics Wizard all synergized extremely well with what I was doing. On the laptop screen a very simple drone was coming together. I still wanted Tashikoma. I couldn't really cosplay the Major without them. So I was going to start. Even if a lot of the work would be wasted when I leveled up my tech, I could still start iterating on the design, start working on the AI. Of course at first it wouldn't be an AI. I couldn't possibly make something with AGI levels of awareness on what little processing power I had. No, first it would all just be algorithms. A few learning scripts, to develop walking patterns, and things that my good little boys and girls would need. But like all children, they would use the first steps of these algorithms to iterate from themselves. But first, I needed a drone to start the process. I basically was going to make something as similar to a full-sized Tashikoma that I could, just much smaller. 2 feet or so across, maybe a foot tall at the head bulb. I likely wouldn't add the back compartment in yet. That would simplify it for the first iteration. I just needed to make the drone, and then start filling in the details with programming. The CAD program took up my attention. Once I parsed out the parts I needed, I focused fully on that. My 3D printer would be getting a lot of work tonight. I kept tinkering away at it. The legs were a lot of work on their own. They had to be capable of the range of motion needed, plus needed enough power to actually actuate. Power sources thankfully weren't too bad, although with the battery systems I could buy off the shelf, I would have some battery life concerns, especially once I started running smarter and smarter systems to control the drone. But for now it was a night of slowly building the internals of the drone, through the CAD program one piece at a time. 100 engineering XP gained. Engineering skill level up. 1 perk point gained. I blinked at the alert that came as I was working on the internal musculature of the drone. Multiple limbs meant, I either needed the electric motors to spread their strength, or have one for each limb. I stepped back from the design to stretch, even, and let my brain cool down. Working for hours on this design was definitely a lot of work, and I was only getting through because of my perks. My actual engineering skill was only just capable of keeping up with the exacting details of what I was working on. Sure, most people could kludge together a drone out of parts with a bit of effort, but I needed something capable of some pretty extreme performance. It had 4 articulating legs, which had wheels, so I had to draw power for the drones to drive. They had to be able to jump. I wanted to work on a wall climbing function for their legs. Something to let them stick, or grab onto walls and climb vertically. I still wanted to do a stealth function, but I was leaving that out for a later design. I simply didn't know enough about optical camo to get it to work. Anyways, it was hard. So to get another perk? Well, that was something truly useful. I once again skipped the grenade-focused perks, because I still had no idea why engineering was so focused on explosives. Instead I scrolled through the perk list to where I went into the design-focused perks. Last time I had picked Design Wizard, vastly improving the quality of my designs. I ran down the list skipping more than a few before I found the one that caught my eye. Robotics Engineering. The robotic form is as familiar to you as your own. Since my main desire was to make Tashikomo, it seemed to be the best choice. The moment I picked it I knew I had made the right choice. I already had Robotics Wizard from crafting, which was all about putting a robot together. Now I had the opposite. A synergy immediately began and I gasped as I realized how many tiny things could be done to enhance a robotic form. I went from someone that could put a robot together, to someone who could design something that was more than just a robot. It honestly made me think of BattleBots. That show on TV that was so popular in my last life. Before I would have been one of the Gen 1 bots. The ones that half the time caused their own downfall or something. Now I was fully aware I could make a bot that would have crushed the entire competition. It was that much of a difference. Understanding the nuances of physics on the robotic form. How easy it would be for their body to exert the forces I would need. I looked at my own chrome arm for a moment and realized how inadequate it was. How badly they had restrained the power the arm could exert, to make it easier to quickly replace in a desperate situation. I shook it off, although it did create that burning desire to make myself better again. The desire for more chrome. To grow stronger. I shook it off. Tashikoma first. I went back to the CAD design I had made so far, and started reworking large sections of it. I didn't need for each limb to have their own motor. I could use a muscle structure instead to make a single much more powerful motor supply the power. Instead of each limb being fully robotic, I would just add synthetic muscles instead. It took up less room, which meant I could make the battery bigger. Fixing one of the supply issues. Mwahaha. Dash. As much as I wanted to really focus down and get the Tashikoma done, I still had other distractions in my life, but that was okay. It was a good thing. Staying cooped up all day wasn't good for you. That is why I was waiting on the corner around Arasaka Tower for Hiromi to meet me for lunch. She had called and wanted to vent about her classes. So I was hanging out beside the 25/7 with food already waiting in the passenger seat for Hiromi to get out of class. I was only pecking at my own meal while I waited so we could eat together. Which is of course when I jerked up at the sight of someone I had only seen from afar. David Martinez. The boy was walking over to the grassy section across the street and looked like he was both eating his lunch, and to my amusement set up a backpack next to him and started selling XPDs. The first boy that walked up to him to buy was handed a compact tablet, and after a few moments the boy poked away and then handed it back. David nodded, seemed to confirm payment, and handed out one of the condom wrappers to the kid. I grabbed the food, and stepped out of the quadra, heading across the street when I got a chance. I really wanted to see this for myself. Selling BDs? I asked as I sauntered over, catching David's attention. The poor kid was half a second into biting into an XXL burrito and he gave it a look of yearning before turning to me. That's right. Best BDs in the city. None of that scav scop. Mox work, and some really preem work that you can't get anywhere else. He offered as he once more reached into the bag and pulled out the tablet and handed it to me. I was practically snickering at the situation, and there was no way I could end it here. I set the food down on the bench beside him and grabbed the tablet. First tab is all normal BDs, good stuff still. Inner Universe is one of our top sellers, it'll make you think you can fly. He said, and I nearly ruptured something as I kept myself from laughing at such a corpo-sounding sales pitch. David was a riot. I've seen it. The parkour is a little kludged at times, but the music is amazing. What? No way. Inner Universe was perfect. The parkour, the death-defying jumps. He nearly jumped off the bench as he spoke. The ghost is preem stuff. Nothing else compares really. He offered and I felt myself smile happily. See? They got my name right. Well, it's preem that you like them. How's working with Hiromi? She isn't too bad, is she? I asked, changing the subject as I handed the tablet back. You know Hiromi? He shot back, surprised, and maybe a little suspicious. Yeah, she's one of my best chums. I'm actually here waiting for her. Saw you selling BDs and wanted to come see. Ah well, she's great. Sure. He said in a way that left me with the opposite feeling. Ah, she's a bit too much? He just gave me a look and didn't say anything. That's fair. I hope she wasn't too mean to you. She can get a little hyper-focused. I'll talk to her, make sure she is nicer to you and Nox. You know Nox too? Yeah? We are. Sorta chums? I'm Motoko. David's eyes instantly widened and I realized if he knew Nox, it was likely that he knew who I was. You're the ghost, he said breathlessly. That's my Netrunner name, and I guess Hiromi used it for the marketing of the BDs too. Holy shit. You're Nova. I've watched The Only Thing They Fear like a million times. He blurted out, and I just winced. Probably shouldn't watch that one too much. I was totally aggro in it. I just wanted to test out the song and stuff. No way. It was the best. Especially the end, with the Cut-O-Matic. Hey. Chainswords do hold a special place in my heart. Yeah. You were like. Rah-ah. And the scavs were like he. I burst into laughter at the noises David was making. They had kinda sounded like that when I had the chainsword. Of course my laughter was interrupted a moment later by a Hiromi missile as I was slammed into. Motoko. Hiromi called out suddenly as she instantly wrapped her arm around mine. Did you wait for me long? She asked, emphasizing her sentence weirdly as she looked at David. Not super long, and I got distracted by David here. He did a good job trying to sell me the BDs. Which he doesn't need to do, because Motoko gets any of the BDs she wants for free. Obviously. Hiromi said, continuing to look at David who was looking more and more nervous. Don't worry David. I'll talk you up to Hiromi. Make you look good to your boss. It's okay Hiromi, he didn't know at first, but he did a great job. I was actually tempted to buy some of the BDs even if they aren't my thing. He's a good salesman. I offered, throwing a wink to David over Hiromi's head, although for some reason he just kept looking even more nervous. Ah, Hiromi, you are holding on pretty tight there. I reached over and patted her head, distracting her, enough to get free and then settling onto the bench. Don't forget your lunch Hiromi, I said, lifting the bag and shaking it. Why don't we hang out with David while we eat? I interrupted his lunch as well, I said as I settled onto the bench next to him and then pulled open the bag of food on my other side, so Hiromi could get access to it as well, although she didn't seem to want to sit down for a moment before eventually settling in. We should go eat somewhere else, let David get back to work. She almost hissed out the last bit, but I just laughed at her. It's lunchtime Hiromi, let him eat. Besides, I want to hear about how he's found working under you. I mean, since he is working for you, he is basically part of Section 9. Obliquely. No, he isn't, Hiromi said, but she was finally starting to eat. Poor Hiromi must be hungry. So David, have you been making good eddies? Any problems? Anyone bothering you or anything? I asked, and the boy once more stopped burrito halfway to his mouth. Which? On one hand, I'm sorry for interrupting his meal, but it was in XXL. Realizing this, I reached over and grabbed one of the cartons of noodles I had planned on eating myself and handed it over. Here, have this instead, I offered, smiling, and he looked surprised for a moment before flashing me a boyish smile and taking the food. Hey, thanks. No problem, I offered, and he quickly started eating, which gave me time to look to Hiromi. So classes have been rough today? Uck. It's those brats in class. No one believes that I've managed to major up for my father. They just scoffed at me. Well, you did, and it's probably on your record, right? So no need to worry about what they think. They are your peers, not your bosses, right? Hiromi just grumbled a bit but nodded, accepting my words as she stuffed some lo mein in her mouth. Wait, you did an op? David asked, and Hiromi actually smirked, looking oh so superior for a moment as she sat up straight. That's right. My father hired our group Section 9, and we not only recovered the data that he wanted, but we brought home so much loot. I'm still super excited to play with the Minotaur, I whispered with a sigh. It was so fun. You just put on the headset, click in the control shard, and suddenly you are a massive walker ready to stomp on anyone in your way. It was like all my dreams come true. Of course it wasn't my real body, so it was only a fun diversion. Someday I'd end up in a Dione, or something, and then I would be the stompy bot. Really, Motoko, what are we even going to do with that thing? It's almost too heavy to move even in Ichi's truck. I don't know, but I'm sure it will come in handy someday. I'll have to figure out something. She mumbled something after that I didn't catch as David interrupted. Whoa. That's so preem. You guys are like total edge runners. Nah. I instantly denied, scrunching my nose at the thought. Edge runners are idiots who just want to die. Trust me, David, you might someday decide to do merc work, but remember something super important, okay? Going home to the ones you love after a gig is the only way to plan things out. If your end goal ends with you dead, then you failed step 1. He didn't look like he quite understood, but I shrugged. I would do my best to guide the gonk away from leaping off the edge, but some people were just dedicated to killing themselves. Did you make a BD of this gig? The one that you did for Arasaka? No. I shook my head. I thought about it, but some gigs you are dealing with things that are too dangerous. The less people that know about that gig the better. So no BD. Or, I wanted to see it from your perspective. Hiromi muttered, and I just laughed at her. I didn't say I didn't scroll the BD. Just that I don't plan on handing it to Judy. But maybe we can get it properly adjusted sometime. Hiromi flashed me a smile and I went back to eating. In the end, I hung out with Hiromi and David until they had to go back to class, but I think my task to raise Hiromi's estimation of David had worked. At least she had gotten real close to him on the way back to Arasaka Tower. So they must have talked about something. I had a complete blueprint of the first draft of the Tashikoma. It definitely wasn't perfect, but after realizing the supply and price of some parts would be difficult, I downgraded a lot. This was a test bed. But the CAD design was done. Tashikoma MK.0.1. My system liked it when I completed a design, and I had gotten a nice engineering and technical ability alert as I finished. Now it was time to put one together. The 3D printer went to work, piece by piece, but that takes time, so I didn't want to just sit in front of the desk staring at it. Instead I switched to another grind. What are you doing? Practice. I chirped to June. He was sitting on the couch watching some TV show he liked, while I was practicing my athletics. Mostly I was just tumbling, back handsprings across the living room until I stopped at the wall, and then turning and doing it again. Grinding. All right. Just don't break anything. He rumbled but went back to his show after a bit. I won't, I said, as I completed a circuit. It was kinda intense flipping around so much, but since it was a newish exercise, I had done something like this before after all, but I hadn't really grinded it like this much, but the alerts were coming in. Mostly athletics, although I did get a body alert on my 10th circuit, so that was nice. I finally took a break, flopping down onto the ground to catch my breath as I felt my chest heave. Finally done? For now. I offered, waving my wrist at June weakly. What are you practicing anyways? Acrobatics. It's useful. I suppose with those ankles of yours it would be. It's just useful in general. Never know when you might need to leap into cover or something. Plus it's good exercise in general, I said, looking over to June and boring my eyes into him as I finished. He of course swiftly turned away and continued snacking as he watched TV. You really need to exercise more, June. I'm already strong. Only some of you. Chrome doesn't count. You will get all flabby if you keep relying on it. I'll just chrome out the flab. We got plenty of eddies, between Fujimura's summer giving me more for gigs, the cheaper apartment, you no longer needing an allowance. I grumbled at the last one. I had only needed a little money from June. Then I made my own. He was probably talking about old Motoko for the most part. You really shouldn't joke about that, June. You need a lot more time before you can chrome up anymore, I said quietly, more seriously. This time he just grumbled at me. I snorted at him, finally standing up and walking over to sit on the couch beside him. Without hesitation I reached into the bag of snacks he was munching. So what are we watching, NEACK? I choked as I threw the food into my mouth. Instantly the taste registered and I spit it right back out. Motoko. June yelped, but I was too busy rushing to the bathroom. June was snacking on Schwab Schwab. It was ants. I had put ants in my mouth, hacking and spitting to remove as much as possible. Why do they taste like ketchup? I moaned as I rushed back out to get something to drink to wash the taste out with. I like the ketchup-flavored ones. Motoko. You are cleaning this up, June yelled, pointing at the spray of spit and red-colored ketchup-flavored ants sprayed across the living room table. I'm dying, I moaned desperately, popping one of June's Nicola just to wash the taste out, which didn't really help as I was just replacing it with the horrid taste of cough medicine. Die after you clean it up, he demanded, grumbling at me.